What's up, comic book fans, and welcome back to another comic book review video. Today, we're sitting down to review Absolute Batman number 16. This is a continuation of that meeting that took place between Batman and Wonder Woman back in the issues of Absolute Wonder Woman 16. Before we jump into it, I just want to say that, in my opinion, this was kind of a filler issue. There isn't a whole lot that goes on in the issue. It's kind of Scott Snyder just tying up all the loose ends that was left in Absolute Batman 14 at the end of the Bane fight. And he couldn't do that in 15 because 15 kind of focused more on the Absolute Joker origin, at least the origin told by Alfred. And then we had the Absolute Arc M special over the holidays, which was the Amadeus Arkham's version of Absolute Joker's origin. And now we're kind of getting the loose end tie up of the fight with Bane here in issue 16. I do have to say that with the reading of issue 16 and kind of the architectural way that Scott Snyder is building this DC universe, I can't help that with the sale of DC Warner Brothers to Netflix, maybe, just maybe, it might be time for Netflix to go to James Gunn and say, hey, listen, Gunn, we appreciate all you've done, but maybe it's time for you to step into a true Kevin Feige-esque role to where you're just a producer and you're kind of overseeing everything, but let somebody else write and direct these movies. Yeah, Superman was great, but the jury's still out on Supergirl and the Superman sequel, Man of Tomorrow. But Peacemaker season 2 wasn't as well received as season 1. The animated stuff is fine. So it's not that James Gunn is doing a terrible job with the film universe so far, but I just kind of feel like maybe it's time to let a fresh visionary like Scott Snyder step in and take over, especially with the writing of the Batman movie, and kind of just let him take these toys and put a fresh coat of paint on them and flip them on their head. Maybe even adapt these absolute stories to these films a little bit. I don't know. That's just my opinion. I think it would kind of freshen everything up. But we're not here to talk about the DC film side of things. We're here to talk about the comic books themselves, the inspiration for the films. And of course, we're here to talk about Absolute Batman 16. So without any further ado, let's get into that and talk about Absolute Batman 16. Here was the cover for 16 here. And like I said, 16 picks up right after the fight between Batman and Bane. And we kind of start off on a Friday here at a construction site where these construction workers are walking up and they knock on a car window where we see Bruce Wayne sleeping, and he kind of grumbles and wakes up. And the guys are just having some fun with him and are like, hey, late night, big guy, what have you been doing with yourself? And they're just kind of talking as they're tearing down the arena or stadium that Batman and Bane had their giant fight in. And they're kind of going back and forth about how, do you believe that Batman, that the city would never demolish this old stadium, but Batman did it in one day, just talking about that epic brawl with Bane. And they're kind of going back and forth until we get the construction foreman kind of saying, you know, it's time for the weekend. And we get our introduction into the Absolute Universe version of Lucius Fox, which isn't this monstrous CEO or head of this tech company or Wayne Enterprises. He's just a construction foreman, but he is still friends with Bruce Wayne. And he's kind of talking to Bruce and saying, you know, I know you've been absent a lot lately, but I do know you, so you have a good reason for it, because it's not like you to be missing. And he just kind of tells Bruce, like, quit taking everything so serious, quit just working, get out there, touch some grass, ride a horse, get in a fight, have some fun, right? Live your life. All work and no play makes for a dull boy. That old adage, right? And that's just kind of what he's saying. So then we cut back to, or over to, Bruce going to the hospital where we see our ultimate version of Oswald Cobblepot and Harvey Dent. That, if you remember back to the Bane story arc, Bane absolutely brutalized these guys. He burned Harvey Dent's face. He basically pummeled Oswald Cobblepot, breaking every bone in his body into absolute nothingness. And Bruce just kind of shows up casually, like, hey, guys, got some subs for you, a little grubbage, a little lunch. And Harvey, you start to see the two-face side of him come out a little bit. And he's just like, you know, that's great that you brought us subs, Bruce, but did you forget that, like, Oz can't eat solids yet? And Bruce is just kind of taken aback. He's like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry for that. And Oswald Cobblepot kind of lashes out with him. He's like, fuck your sandwiches, bro. He's like, at least Selena left with some dough before she took off. And Harvey's like, see, there's a true friend. Did she leave you anything, Bruce? Your usual broken heart on a roll, kind of referencing to Selena and Bruce's on again, off again relationship. And Bruce is kind of taken aback, like, I didn't come here to fight, guys. I just came here to try to make amends. Then Oswald's like, well, why did you come here then? to make it all better, to patch things up, to rebuild. And he says, everyone sees me, Harvey and Ed, and they think we're monsters, but you chose this. And now look at you. You can't even look at us, can you? And Bruce kind of hangs his head in shame because he knows that Harvey's right. He knows that he didn't really think things through. He didn't think Bane was going to go this far. He didn't think that Bane would involve his friends and family. He didn't really think through the repercussions and ramifications of what his just absolute locked on focus of taking down absolute Bane was going to be. And now he's having to deal with those face on or head on, if you will. And Penguin says, that's what I thought. You're real good at saving the city. How about next time you try saving one of your friends for a chance? And Bruce kind of he's like, you're what? You're right. And he walks away because he has nothing to say to that. How do you come back from that? How do you come at that? Like, what is your rebuttal to that when you know they're right? And you hear off panel and says, yeah, that's right. Go walk away, big hero. You're not him. And this is kind of where we get the first look at the absolute Two-Face coming out and Harvey Dent in action. And you get the one side of Harvey Dent that says harsh Oz. And Oz just kind of grunks and lays back down, but then it switches to the other side and he says, nah, he deserved it. So there you go. You get your first little look at both sides of absolute Two-Face there, right? And then we get the title for it, Bat Out of Hell. And we cut to the Gotham Museum of Natural History, where Batman is sort of going through this history museum to kind of get this Amazonian history and artifacts of the past to kind of look for something to help his friends, right? And that's when he takes out that USB or that trinket that he's given by Absolute Wonder Woman, and he kind of makes a door, and he says, I demand an audience with Diana of the Wild Isles. So then through this door, Absolute Wonder Woman walks, and she says, since the talisman of Hecate will only work 3 times, I can assume you're summoning me for something dire. And here we get a conversation between Batman and Diana, where basically Batman is saying, through your myths are full of ancient artifacts that are told to be able to change people from humans to beasts and beasts to humans and vice versa. Think of the Minotaur, right? And Diana says, well, there's nothing really here on this plane that can do that, but I do know of one artifact that might help in another realm, but the journey would be long and deadly and a few weeks travel. And Batman's like, yo, I got a job. Like, I've already had this conversation with Lucius Fox. I can't be late anymore. I got a job to do. And Diana kind of responds to him and she's like, well, luckily time moves differently there. But as I said, the danger. And Bruce kind of responds and says, Diana, there's something there to help Waylon. I want to go now. And Diana says, all right, Bruce, as you wish, accept this blood sacrifice of Diana, the Wild Isles, daughter of the Circes, beloved of the great, terrible Hecate, goddess of the crossroads. And she creates this door and it opens up to another realm. And they walk through and she says, steady yourself, Bruce. And Bruce says, is this Hades? And Diana says, no, this place is a place that exists between the surface world and the underworld, beneath my mother's isle, where the veil between realms is thin. So we kind of get Bruce and Diana starting on this journey. And Bruce says, what about your flying horse? And Diana says, anything flying here is a target. We're safe walking. Besides, Pegasus is still weary of mortals, finding most of them unworthy. And Batman just kind of says, you're saying he wouldn't like me? And she's like, nah, bro, nobody likes you. Like, what are you talking about? And she's like, come on, we walk. And then we got to proceed to get these days. And you see the lightning. And Diana says, if you look at the lightning, it'll kill you. And day 3, we see this flying dragon type thing whistling a song. And she says, if you listen to the song, it will kill you. Day 7, if you stumble, the sand will kill you. Day 10, she says, keep up. And day 11, Bruce sees a giant. And he's like, is that a Cyclops? Yes, if you look in his eye. And Bruce is like, yeah, I know. It'll kill me, right? And she's like, no, it's just impolite. Why would he kill you? And she said, onward, Bruce. And they continue on. Then they finally camp day 12. Then we get to day 13 and 14 and so on and so forth as they're just walking through this land and making it through this land. And they kind of start talking to each other about each other's pasts. And, Batman says, she tells Batman about being raised by Circes in hell. And Batman tells her about his dad. And he says, the next thing I remember, policemen were yelling my name, pulling the bats off of me. And Diana says, no child should lose their father that way. I'm truly sorry, Bruce. Then on day 16, Diana says, we're getting closer. And they walk up to this gravesite, and Batman says, "Who is he?" And Wonder Woman says, "A king who died fighting a Krullis." And Batman said, "And the coins?" And Wonder Woman says, "A payment for Sharon the ferryman to bypass passage to Elysium where fallen heroes dwell." And Batman says, "Heroes he lost." And Wonder Woman said, "Apparently his people loved him. They must have made this tribute." And Batman said, "The coins, do they really give people passage?" So this absolute Batman is more skeptical of stuff. He's not really the most detective type of thing. He's still in his infancy as far as being Batman. So he's very skeptical about things, and he doesn't really look at the world kind of the way our traditional Batman does, right? So Diana continues on about the coin and says, "Some say they do nothing, others that they grant crossing, still others that they serve as a dream bridge offering visions. But no matter, we've arrived. Acrylis guards that bridge there. Tonight we'll camp here. Tomorrow we fight." And then we get to Saturday and we cut to Alfred dragging this cart, and it says, "It's not that heavy," he says. "Sure, if you're 24 years old and built like a brick." And you hear meat. So we have absolute Alfred pulling this truck of meat to feed Killer Croc, Waylon. And Alfred says, "Yes, meat in the trolley." And Croc is like, "Meat." And he's like, "Over there, man. Not me. I'm just bones there. Don't you eat me," he screams as he pulls a gun, and Croc just kind of roars. And he's like, "Bloody hell," as Killer Croc starts munching down on his dinner. And then we cut back to Bruce and Diana, who are sitting around a campfire. And Diana says, "Acrylis is more than a Satyrian. He's a lord of transformation. His bow makes 2 legs into 4 and 4 into 2. The land he guards is full of beings he has changed." And Bruce says, "I'm sorry. It's just first monsters under Gotham, then the thumb drive you gave me, aliens, gods, now this place." And Diana says, "I understand your world is new and strange to me. Here." And Batman says, "What is it?" And Diana says, "It will protect you, not against injury or death, but at least against Acrylis' magic." And Bruce says, "Diana, you think I can do this? Help my friend?" Just kind of questioning, asking her if she thinks like, is this possible? Can I do this? Can I help my friend here? And Diana says, "Everything you need lies inside you. Now drink." And Bruce kind of drinks his potion and he falls asleep. And as he's sleeping, Diana walks over and she places these coins on his eyes. And it causes him to go into this dream state where we get a beautiful, just beautiful conversation that takes place right here. That kind of harkens back to the button when Bruce, as Batman, met his father, Thomas Wayne, as the Flashpoint Batman. So we kind of get that here, but it's young Bruce Wayne as a child, still donned in the Batman cowl and cape, but he's a child. And he removes it and he says, "What the dad?" And he sees Thomas Wayne standing there and he says, "Hey, kiddo." And he runs up and just has this beautiful embrace, right? And then they have this conversation, is what takes place next. And he says, "Walk with me." And Bruce says, "Okay." And Thomas Wayne says, "So what is it? What's on your mind?" And Bruce says, "It's just, you're a hero, Dad. That day at the zoo, you saved me. Ozzy, Waylon, all of us. Me, I'm trying, but I just keep hurting everyone I care about." So that realization that as much as he tries, he still fails is really starting to set in here. And Thomas Wayne says, "This might come as a surprise, but I didn't think of what I did at the zoo that day as saving you." And Bruce is like, "What do you mean? You didn't?" And he says, "No, for me, saving you was what I did every day before that one, teaching you, being your dad." And Bruce says, "I understand." And Thomas Wayne says, "You're an engineer, Bruce. You know, building isn't about any one ribbon cutting. It's the commitment to making the city better, visualizing what could be and working every day to make it so. Little by little, even in those moments it seems out of reach, especially in those moments. So get out there and build." And he gives him some real great fatherly advice, especially as me, a father of 2 girls. When we become parents, our story eventually seemingly ends and we change focus to helping tell our kids stories and helping prepare our kids to live a life without us. We're preparing them to live a life without us and for us to become a footnote in their story. And that's kind of what Thomas Wayne is saying here, is that my greatest role was being your dad and preparing you for what comes next. So then we cut to Batman saying, "I really miss you, Dad." And we go back to Batman being woken up by Diana, and Batman wakes up and says, "Diana, I had a," and Diana says, "Sorry, Bruce, it's time. Get ready." And Batman is starting to put on his stuff, and he says, "The artifact we need." And Diana says, "I can help you in the fight, but it must be given to you when you best him." And Diana stands up and says, "Acrylis!" and shouts out his name. "Acrylis, come out and face us!" And Acrylis walks out of the distance and says, "Well, well, Diana of the Amazons, daughter of Circe, who thought, though gifted with power of transformation like myself, is too good to consort with us lowly beings down here. What divine joy shall I take in felling you and your mortal mate?" And they both scream at the same time, "We're not together." So it's kind of like he's insinuating that Batman and Wonder Woman are dating here, right? And they start the battle. They rush in, and they are just absolutely laying into Acrylis. And Wonder Woman screams, "Now!" And Batman punches Acrylis in the stomach and knocks him down. And as Batman's standing there looking over his victory, Wonder Woman's just like, "Bruce, never stand behind a centaur." And Bruce is like, "What? Why?" Like an idiot, and just gets boom, absolutely whacked and booted away and off the bridge. And Acrylis says, "Shame. I admit he had a warrior heart." And then we see Pegasus come out of nowhere and dive down. And Wonder Woman's like, "Pegasus, what?" Like she's taken back, like what's going on? And Wonder Woman says, "Godspeed, my friend." Is he essentially think he's falling to hell, or we don't really know where he's falling to? And Acrylis says he might have had a fine centaur, perhaps a bat centaur, from my stable. He as he laughs. And Wonder Woman's pretending to attack. And then out of these clouds comes Pegasus again. And you hear, "Hey, Acrylis," from off screen. And Bruce is now riding Pegasus like a G. And he says, "I got your bat centaur right here." And he rushes in, and Acrylis draws his arrow, notches it, pulls back, and says, "All right, Amazon," from two legs. Wonder Woman, and he gets ready to fire his arrow, and Batman's like, "Wonder Woman, look out!" And Acrylis says, "To four, Diana," and he lets the arrow fly, but Batman gets in the way of it and takes it in the shoulder and falls to the ground. And Acrylis is insolent, and Diana says, "You're right, Acrylis. My mother is a master of transformation, but so am I." And she charges in, and he said, "Watch closely as I transform your face." And he just, boom, punches him right in the face, knocking several of his teeth out, just with an absolute massive punch, something you probably find on World Star or something like that, right? And knocking him down, and he is out. And Diana screams, "Bruce," and rushes over to him. And Bruce says, "Diana, I failed him. I couldn't. The artifact." And she says, "Shh, hold still." And she breaks the arrow, and he screams in pain. And Diana says, "You've not failed, Bruce. Remember what I told you. Now let's get you home." And Bruce says, "No, not yet." And that just shows the sheer strength and power of absolute Wonder Woman, because she throws this Batman, who's supposedly 7 foot tall and like 400 pounds, over her shoulder like he's an infant, and walks him away. And Diana and Bruce says, "I haven't gotten to say goodbye," as he sees his dad still standing there watching over to him. Then we cut back to Sunday, because remember, only a couple days have passed, even though it's been weeks in this other world. Only a couple days have passed in the real world. And the alarm goes off, and Bruce sits up and he says, "No, no." Out of his sleep, he says, "Remember what she did?" And Diana's sitting there saying, "Everything you need lies inside of you." Cutting back to when they're talking around the fire. So Bruce proceeds to rip this arrow that's still in him out. And he said, turn two legs into four and four into two, the artifact. Then we get cut back to work on Monday morning. Bruce is walking in, and he sees Lucius Fox, and he says, "Your arm, what the hell did you do?" And Bruce says, "I was just following your advice, Mr. Fox. Touched some grass, rode a horse, got in a fight." And Lucius is like, "Well, look, bro, I wasn't serious. I was just like telling you to have some fun, not really go out there and hurt yourself." And Bruce is like, "No, I'm just kidding, man. I slipped in the shower. Come on, time to build things," as he gets back to construction. Then we cut back to the sewer, and Bruce is taken that artifact and put it around a rope and stuck it to the wall, and says, wear this necklace. Let it touch your skin. You're never alone. B. And Waylon looks at it and grabs it and just mutters, "Bruce." And that's where we end, as we get ready to transition into absolute Poison Ivy. Like I said, there you go. Very much a filler issue, just putting a nice little bow on everything that happened in Absolute Bane and getting us ready for Absolute Poison Ivy, the next story arc in the Absolute Batman saga. But with that being said, I love this book. I'm going to give this issue particular probably like a 7.5 out of 10. It was a nice just closing chapter. It didn't do a lot to move us forward to the Ivy stuff other than telling us that Ivy's next, but it was a nice little realization of Bruce. That beautiful conversation between Bruce and his dad really sent it home for me. So I think 7.5 out of 10 is my rating for this issue. Let me know in the comment section below, what did you think of issue 16 of Absolute Batman? Are you excited for Absolute Poison Ivy? Yes, no, maybe so. Let me know down below. I hope you guys are enjoying this new Comic Book Wednesday. Get out there, read some new comics, and we'll see you next time around the spinner rack.